Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to today's live session. I'm very excited for the amazing conversation that we are going to have today, which is going to teach you the skill of unlocking and getting crazy opportunities that nobody in the world may not even be aware of. And no, before you run away, I'm not going to talk about a shady crypto scheme or something like that that's there to trap you. No, what I'm talking about are the principles, the fundamentals that help you grow, that help you succeed, and that help you create the future and the life that you want. Now, over there, the number one mistake that most of us make is assuming that the journey for growth and the journey of success takes time, it is unique, it is difficult, and it is different for everybody who's involved. Now, that's the first myth that I want to break for you today, which is going to help you look beyond the obvious and leverage extraordinary results in whatever area of your life it may be. That's the first thing, that success is not unique, success is not difficult, success is not created through challenge or problems and all that stuff. Success is a result of following specific patterns, and that's why I love to say success leaves clues. A lot of us are blind to the clues, which is why when we're in the journey to our goals, we feel so lost, lonely, scared, and confused. Because we have no idea, right? What do we do? How do we grow? How can we take action? And because we don't have those ideas, we are struggling and we are not able to achieve the end outcomes that we want. Now, the way to break this whole cycle of struggle and difficulty and challenge and this whole idea of figuring it out alone is to understand this truth that success is always leaving clues. Success is nothing but a set of repeated actions in a pattern that gets you the result that you want. Now, what you want to be adept at is not just struggle and effort and hard work. While those are incredible traits to have, they're not enough. Because if hard work was the only thing that got people where they wanted to be, the people who are laborers, the people who are doing 17, 18-hour shifts every single day, they'd be at the top. Success is not a function of hard work, success is a function of value. Now, a lot of people who understand this can then implement and understand and decode the strategy of successful people that helps them get to the end outcome of getting to create more value. Now, this is just one example, right? There are multiple examples. But the fundamental truth I want you to know is that success leaves clues, because of which one of the best habits you can build is studying successful people. It's been the secret of my success in life. It should be the secret of your success in life. Now, a lot of people will study successful people, but they'll make a grave mistake while they're doing it. And that's why they'll only be stuck in looking at the obvious that everyone knows but doesn't work. But they won't be able to look beyond the obvious into the real secrets that actually work. Now, let me introduce you to that side and let me show you how you can be the person who finds those unique patterns that slip everybody else's mind. The first thing is, you're not going to look at their results, you're going to look and study their process. This is where most people will give up, but if you stick through, you have multiple rewards to reap. You see, it sounds good to read a Wikipedia article about somebody. It feels amazing to watch somebody's motivational video that talks about how they did things and how many hardships they went through and how they emerged victorious and all that stuff. But at the same time, what is important to realize and know is that that's the end result. The end result did not get them where they are today. The end result is the product. What got them there is the process that they followed. Which is why, if you want to model successful people and if you want to understand them, and if you want to decode the science of looking beyond the obvious, getting those clues that make the path crystal clear for you, as if someone has handed you a literal golden secret plan, well, for that, you need to look beyond and to look into the process of success, not just the result of success. And that's where books, biographies, documentaries, all of this comes into play. Now, there as well, you want a better, stronger, and different lens of understanding things. Otherwise, you'll be like everybody else. You'll watch the documentary, you'll watch the movie, you'll say, wow, this was amazing. You'll read the book and you'll think, hey, yeah, that's amazing. That's so much determination. That's so much persistence. That's the process they followed. Well, you could have decoded that otherwise as well. They're the most common success principles around, and yes, they're important. But then the question is, they are not the only ones, right? And for you to get that secret path, for you to get that leverage in your journey, you want to decode your role models in a way where you can see the patterns they may not even have mentioned. But when you see the story, the patterns connect. So let me give an example of a story that I heard that really portrays this, that shows the power of looking beyond the obvious, looking beyond the surface level, and making connections that may not even be there. So this comes from the story of Sherlock Holmes, who's one of the most famous detectives. There was a case that he was put on to solve. Now, this was a particularly tricky one because late in the night, a woman had been murdered in her own home. And while listening to the neighbors, he was getting a lot of different stories. He was getting a lot of different examples. And the stories were, at the very least, confusing, at the most hopeless, because they were not leading anywhere. Then he came into the crime scene, he saw everything, he saw where the whole thing happened, he saw where the weapon was, he sealed it off, he observed everything. Now, what most detectives would do is that they would only look at this and they try to figure out the clues from what is there. And that's where they'll go wrong. The reason Sherlock Holmes is famous is because he was able to connect dots in a way nobody else could. So here's what he did. He went out there and he observed the surroundings. He listened to the statements. He went to the coroner's office. He got the report. He found out, okay, this was the approximate time of death, right? And he knew it was after midnight. Now he connected the dots of not what had happened, but what had not happened, and that helped him solve the case. So there was a dog that the woman owned, and the dog was a particularly loyal one. And if you know anything about dogs, you know that they're very protective and caring of their owners. And if somebody is intruding into the home as a stranger after midnight to kill somebody, the dog cannot stay silent. Yet not a single neighbor said they could hear the dog barking. Everybody said there was no sound, they just found out in the morning. But it's not possible that the dog wouldn't have barked if it would have been a stranger. So, just by looking at what didn't happen, Sherlock Holmes was able to connect the dots and realize, hey, actually, the killer is somebody the woman knew. And then he connected other dots. And the other dots he connected were, even if it was somebody the woman knew, if that person was coming in late at night, the dog would have been spooked at least, because the dogs know the patterns aren't there. The human beings don't just arrive in the middle of the night randomly like that. Dogs are smart enough to figure that out. So this was somebody the woman knew. This was somebody the woman trusted. This was somebody who was already in the house for multiple hours, which is why this was not an accident, and this was something that was pre-planned, premeditated. And as he got that clarity, he was able to solve the case much faster than he would have been if he just looked at what was there rather than what was not there. So, in your journey of decoding people, this is what I mean by look beyond the obvious, to find ways, to find strategies, to find opinions, to find structures, to find opportunities that the common people just can't seem to take a glimpse of because they are focused on what's there. I want you to find the gaps in the story. I want you to find the implicit no's the person may have said to get to where they are. I want you to decode and understand how your role model became who they are, not just by the things they said yes to, but also by the things they said no to, not just by what they did, but also by what they refused to do, not just by the morals they had, but also by the values they refused to sacrifice. Don't just look at one end of the story, look at all ends of the story. And even if the books don't mention this, even if the documentaries don't mention this, if you have a keen eye and if you're present, oh, you can see these patterns in all different kinds of ways. And the moment you notice them, adapt them. The moment you see them, take them in. The moment you realize this is something that I've struck, which is gold, start living by that, start creating by that. And that's how you create magic, that's how you create success, that's how you find the leverage and the opportunities that shock the rest of the world. Then they're asking you, how did you get so lucky? How did you find it? And you'll have the answer, and that is, I put in the work to decode the success of people in a way nobody else was willing to do. And because I did, I noticed patterns, I noticed structures, I noticed things that are beyond the obvious, that are on a level of depth, which you cannot communicate, you can only experience. And when you experience that depth, you create magic wherever you go. Now, in my life personally, I've implemented this on my skill of writing, which is one of the biggest reasons I have also become an articulate speaker who can put his thoughts in a beautiful syntax and structure rather than just rambling on for the sake of it. If you would have noticed, I'm very careful to not use any unnecessary filler words while I'm speaking. I'll ensure that the structure of my speech is grammatically correct. I'll ensure that I'm not using unnecessary ands and buts and this and that and that kind of, slurry, unthought out speech. Now, the reason I'm able to do that is not because I went out there to just get a public speaking masterclass. They're amazing. They helped me a lot. You know what helped me even more? Mastering the art of writing, mastering the art of communicating. Because here's the dots that I connected. When I studied a book called On Writing Well by William Zinzer, when I studied Stephen King's memoir that's titled On Writing, A Journey of the Craft, when I studied a lot of other books and subjects related to mastering the craft of clear communication and writing, I didn't just take writing advice. I decoded the books, I understood them on a deeper level, and I asked myself, where else does this apply? What is the book not saying, which is something it should be able to say, which is something I can connect as my dots? And when I thought in that way, right, I realized, wait a minute, this applies to speaking as well. Because if I'm practicing the craft of writing, I'm slowing my thoughts down. I'm becoming intentional with the words I use. I'm prioritizing my communication, not just for impression, but for clarity. Because in the written medium, the feedback loop is much slower. Nobody's going to be there in front of me to judge and tell me or make weird faces for the way I'm speaking. So when I'm writing, all I have to do is be one with the document, be one with myself, and express what I want to express and prioritize clarity, prioritize openness, prioritize implementing the principles that make good writing great. Now, when I understood that, when I figured out the science of creating tension, even in nonfiction, when I figured out what are the literary devices that make you communicate a point in a much stronger and more persuasive way than you could if you're just using plain language, when I understood how writing can be used to elicit imagery rather than just some random text for the sake of communication, I figured out creative writing is one of the skills that made me a great speaker because it gave me the ability to slow down my thoughts enough to structure them in a beautiful way where I don't have to worry about having a script in front of me. I can speak as if I'm reading a well structured script because my mind has gotten so used to the process, it just happens. So now I asked myself this question: what's not being said? What's not there? Where else does this apply? And through that, I discovered the interconnectedness of life that exists. Now, this was just one example of how I improved my public speaking skills by actually mastering writing. Just like that, improving my business skills has made me a better coach. Improving other aspects of my life has made me better at my relationships. In fact, I'll tell you this: if you want to have the relationship of your dreams, if you want to have a relationship that's hassle free, learn to write. There's nothing better than that because when it forces you to slow your thoughts down, you see, oh, this is where the communication gaps are. And what's the problem in relationships? Communication gaps. So it's just interesting, to see all these interconnections, to see these insights, and to recognize that if I can build the ability to look beyond the obvious, I can create magic in my life And that magic, my friends, is you. That magic is the gift you are here to bring to this world. So take this concept on today, innovate, explore, understand things. Know that success leaves clues. There are set patterns. Decode those patterns, not just in terms of what is being done, but also in terms of what is not being said, what is implied, and what are the connections you can look at which go beyond the obvious. And when you do, magic will unfold. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you once again tomorrow at the same time. That is 8:30 p.m. IST. Bye. See you soon.